Whether you operate one forklift or thousands, one location or hundreds, the new My Toyota customer portal can help you optimize your operation and material handling equipment. This one-stop, free-to-use platform is designed to help you take control of your information and make smarter decisions, all at the touch of a button. Register and access your data today at my.toyotaforklift.com. That's my.toyotaforklift.com.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
All right, it's Kevin Lawton with the New Warehouse Podcast. Today we are coming to you with our fourth installment in our partnership with Material Handling Wholesaler. This is for the September 2020 issue. And we're going to be talking to Garry Bartecki, who is a CPA and MBA at GB Financial Services. The September 2020 cover story is entitled The World of Dealership Finance. And we're going to talk to Garry a little bit about current state of financing, how people are functioning when it comes to financing versus leasing versus renting, what the reaction in the market has been to that, and also a little bit about how operations can work with dealers to help to alleviate some cost during these times, to kind of have a win-win on both sides. So Gary's going to give us some of his insight on that and talk to us a little bit about what's been going on in the world of finance. So, Garry, welcome to the show. How are you?
Yeah, I got. Thank you for inviting me.
Definitely happy to have you on, and happy to find out more about this topic as well. This is not something that we've kind of covered before on the podcast, so it'd definitely be interesting. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and kind of how you are involved in the finance world?
Well, I've been involved with rental, leasing, and financing, my whole career. I started out as an audit partner at BDO, and I specialized in dealerships and rental and leasing transactions, and been doing it for 40 years. Worked there, and then I was the CFO at Associated Equipment Distributors, who worked with their dealers. They produced cost of doing business surveys and did CFO conferences. And I also great to produce these columns for both Material Handling Wholesaler and Equipment Today, which deals with contractors. So it's been a enjoyable ride, and I've always been fascinated by the dealer operations and how they juggle the sales, new and used sales, and service and parts. And then they get into the leasing business with all different formats for that type of transaction. So it's just always a fascinating topic for me, and I just loved every minute of it.
Definitely, very nice. So definitely a long experience and history there with the finance world. So we're talking to the right guy. So why don't you talk to us? I'm sure over the 40 years that you've been involved in this, you kind of probably never seen something quite like what's going on currently, right, with COVID. So why don't you talk to us about what does the current state of financing look like, and has there been an impact because of COVID?
Well, what fascinated me about the dealer side of the business was they always seem to make it through the problem periods, even though they were highly leveraged. So it's really kind of unique. On the other side of that coin is, because they were able to do that in the past, I hope a lot of them and a lot of their customers aren't thinking that this is similar to what they've gone through in the past, because it isn't. And this is going to be a much more long-term process to get back to normal. And in terms of financing, everybody, what I'm seeing is everybody's tightening up, and everybody's looking harder at the credits. People are looking at their current arrangements to see if they still want to proceed or if tweaks have to be made. And even with customers or acquaintances I know in business who have been 100% in compliance with their loan covenants are still getting questions, and people are looking at pulling back the credit, or maybe asking them to provide more collateral. So the banks are reserving a lot of losses on their books, tremendous losses, and they're expecting even more. And with the way things are going and the timeline and people not working, I expect it's going to continue. So my message to everybody in any business is protect your balance sheet and cut your fixed costs to as much as you can, which leads us into, what are some of those options to get that accomplished? Mm-hmm. And that is to push off the cost of ownership, push off the cost of operations and equipment to somebody else. And so that's where the rental business comes in, and the financing, et cetera, for the equipment. I don't know if I'd be too interested in taking on new contracts to buy equipment, or taking on long-term leases to get access to equipment. Right now, my game plan would be when I need it, I'll get it, and when I'm done with it, I'll send it back.
Gotcha. Okay. So basically, your kind of guidance right now, it sounds like, is if you have a specific need for some type of equipment or machinery, then, the way to go is probably rental for right now, and use it and rent it for the time being until you're done with it, and then send it back. Is that correct?
Yes. And, and what goes along with that is you got to take a look at what you currently own. And make sure you're getting the utility value and the financial value out of it, the ROI out of it in your internal process. And if you're not using it, everybody's like they're in the rental business now. The rental business, you got to have a certain amount of utilization to allow to keep that piece of equipment in your rental fleet. And I think the dealers, as well as the customers, warehouse folks that have a lot of equipment that they own, they got to take a look at that now and see if it still pays to keep it and fix it and own it and insure it and move it and et cetera, et cetera. Well, maybe I'm better off, because if we're going to get sporadic, changes in our demand for our products, we're slowing down, and we've got spikes and valleys, and with our business, we might be better off syncing those changes along with if we have an equipment. So it's interesting times.
Definitely very interesting, and a lot of change and a lot of different ways of looking at things, but also opportunities to be had as well. So when you look at what's going on, and just overall in general, we look at operations from a warehousing standpoint, from the people that are going to be utilizing the equipment like forklifts and material handling equipment. How can they kind of work with dealers to help alleviate some cost during rougher times, or just kind of get a better relationship, and to make sure it's kind of like a win-win situation for the dealer and the customer as well?
Well, I think what everybody's got to get more familiar with what's available on the rental side of the equation. Mm-hmm. The short-term, daily, weekly, monthly rentals, as opposed to 60-month leases, and or purchases, or maintenance contracts, or anything like that. So there's other ways to get what you need when you need it. You got to go ahead and find out. The big issues are right now. You got to protect that balance sheet, and I'm not interested in adding more debt to my balance sheet, because it's going to affect my covenants. And on the other hand, if I rent something, I get to write it off on the books. And if it's a short-term rental, I don't have to capitalize it. So that kind of makes sense. To me, I'm looking to really take care of my covenants on the bank side. Mm-hmm. So whatever I got to do, I have to pick that up and work with it, which means I have to maximize my EBITDA numbers and support interest, taxes, and depreciation. And to do that, I don't want to take on any additional debt. And I really don't want to really take on any long-term leases. I want to do what I, get done with what I got, or minimize ownership type scenarios and rent until this pandemic thing, goes away, which could be another couple of years. You know, so it's so operations really has to look at what they've got and how often they use it. Right now, a lot of people on the lift truck side, they're looking at the lithium batteries, which really work well with the equipment, cuts your cost, which helps your EBITDA, and things like that. So they got to take a look at everything. Everybody's got to take a look at their expense structure now, because things are going to be changing. And as I keep hearing about what's going to happen in the economy over the next 12 months, 15 months, 16 months, is that everything's going to get repriced. That means you got to look at all the expenses you're incurring to see if there's ways to lower those expenses, and at the same time expect the same, request from your customers. So it's how do I keep doing what I'm doing and maximizing my opportunities, but at the same time, how do I manage my balance sheet, increase my EBITDA, and reduce my debt service or other fixed type contracts.
Definitely. I think, it's going to be interesting. And like you said, I think that, this situation is going to, maybe COVID goes away, there's a vaccine, whatever the case may be. But I think still there's going to be some lingering effects, like you said, into the next couple of years. So I'm curious, with that being said, at the same time as well, in kind of the warehousing sector and distribution side of things, some companies have seen spikes in business instead of downturns. Actually, they've experienced kind of peak-like things. So are you seeing from a financial standpoint in the dealership world, are you guys experiencing an uptick in rentals or uptick in leases because people's businesses are growing a little bit and they need more capacity to handle the demand from consumers who are at home and can't go to brick and mortar stores?
Yeah, I see that. I've encountered the increase in business in a lot of cases, but then you got to be careful that you don't get too rambunctious on taking on additional fixed costs to handle that business. So, I'm looking at outsourcing. I know dealers and rental companies that have outsourced their trucking and, whatever they can on maintenance side, and avoid the internal cost and push out whatever you can, because they can probably do it better than you can internally anyhow. But so I think you got to look at every cost. Make sure even though you're getting a strike of business, make sure it's turning into the same measure of profit that you're expecting. But at that same time, keeping in mind that you could get pressures in terms of pricing from customers. Number one, and number two, you got to be real careful granting additional credit, because the other side of that coin is you got to know that you're going to get paid once you deliver the product. And so the financing side of it is going to be tough. So even though you grow your business, you're going to have more receivables, you might have more inventory. But at the same time, don't just assume that the bank is going to work with you on extending any credit lines at this stage of the game. So, and I've seen and I've done a couple of seminars on, selling yourself into bankruptcy, where your cash flow slows down to the point where it's not covering the additional expenses you took on to cover the increase in business. So it's great that people are seeing an uptick, but at the same time, you just got to make sure you run it tight and try and protect the balance sheet and the cash flow, which to me are the two most important things, on your plate.
Interesting. Yeah, I like that perspective, because I think that, like you said, sometimes it's like, okay, we see more business coming in, so we feel a little comfortable. We could spend a little more, but maybe that's not the best course to take, right?
Well, and I think you've got the sources. The equipment dealers. There's a lot of them that also work in the systems area in terms of warehouse systems. The lift truck dealers. I get them out there to see, gee, what can I do? How can I reduce my costs? Do I need to use the same number of machines? Do I have to keep one of my leases going to turn over? One of my maintenance contracts going to turn over? And I push them for whatever you can to get yourself in a more comfortable position with what everything that's going on right now. They probably listen. So it's a win-win here, for everybody. If I can rent more equipment to somebody, and at the same time they can reduce their costs and the cash, increase the cash flow, and eliminate fixed costs and balance sheet accounts that are negative in terms of the covenants, and so it's a win-win. It's everybody's in the rental business now, whether they know it or not.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's some great advice there, definitely. So in terms of, obviously, so much discussion these days is about COVID, and, we've been talking about it off and on here as well. But, what do you think will be like the long lasting impact from COVID? Do you think that, we're talking about rentals a lot. So do you think that renting will now become the new norm as we move out of the COVID situation, or do you think that it'll go back to more finance and lease?
The renting is, for a lot of the reasons we, discussed in the last 5 minutes, that, the renting is picking up. And as a result of renting picking up, these equipment values are increasing. They're holding their values pretty much. So if people had to get rid of some equipment, it might not be a bad time to take a look at it because things are firming up. And I would, get these guys out there and they're experts and have them take a look at what you're doing in the warehouse and see what you can change and take a look at all your contracts. But it's going to be a long-term issue. And again, with the changing accounting rules, they're going to want you to record all of your operating leases as debt on your balance sheet. The only way to get around that is to do short-term, daily, weekly rental contracts, monthly contracts, without any long-term commitment. You can probably avoid that and, help avoid booking those additional liabilities, which will have a negative impact on your loan covenants. So it's going to be a long haul. And I think the banks are not going to be very helpful for a long time. So you got to really don't assume you're going to get an increase in the line if your business picks up. And that's going to be the issue.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I think that like you said, it's going to be a long haul, definitely. I think until we see some normalcy, and then even if we see normalcy, like you said, I think it's going to be a long time too until people feel a comfort level again, especially banks, like you mentioned.
Yeah, what they're expecting is further recession, deepening of recession, maybe a depression, and then with all the money floating around that they keep printing, eventually they're turning to, during the recession, et cetera. In most cases, they'll have a deflationary impact, but once all the money gets put in place and starts floating around, then inflation will probably be, part of the equation.
Right. Yeah.
That could be a couple of years out. So times change. Management today's got to really have a game plan. Here's what we plan on doing. Here's our disaster plan. You got to have that sitting on your desk at all times, so that you got to do anything to adjust the operations. You got it all laid out and you're ready to go.
Definitely. I think that's an important note to end on there, to make sure that you do have that plan in place in case, like you said, there's some kind of disaster. So Garry, I want to thank you very much for coming on the show and talking to us. How can people find out more information about GB Financial Services or get in touch with you?
My website, I don't, in the column and in the magazine, I don't think my website's on, not my website, my email, but it's GB Financial Services, and I just use my personal email, gbartecki@podcast.net. They can get a hold of me that, or they can get a hold of me through the publication.
Okay, great. And we'll put that information on the newwarehouse.com as well. So for the September 2020 issue, you can head to mhwmag.com and read Garry's cover story there called The World of Dealership Finance. Garry, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Okay, thank you.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you want more content from the New Warehouse, check out our new video series called All Hands on LinkedIn. Just search for the New Warehouse on LinkedIn and follow along.